Hello all, my name is Dana Brown, and today we'll be talking about determining sexual consent. So just as an introduction, for every 1,000 women attending a university, there will be approximately 35 incidents of rape per academic year. Both sexual assault and rape derive from a lack of sexual consent. So, my purposes, objectives, and expectations. My purpose is to understand why consent is hard to decipher. One of my objectives would be to figure out variables that influence one's perception of consent, whereas that be like their culture, their age, their gender, their sexual orientation. And one of my expectations is that most people do not have a clear understanding of consent. So, my research question at hand is how do college students know that they have received sexual consent? So, one of the major topics that I've talked about in my literature review is reasonable belief. What is it? It's based on communication, verbal and nonverbal cues. Oftentimes, students have a combination of these cues which can cause a miscommunication. Consent is most frequently communicated through the combination of the two, which can lead to unavoidable errors, including like legal errors, the result of an unintentional rape or unintentional sexual assault. So, college students. College students represent one of the largest communities that are subject to higher rates of sexual assault and rape, and there are a lot of gender differences in the communication at this age. Women tend to be have verbal cues such as yes or no. Men are nonverbal cues. They're more about nodding, yes or no, or maybe your body language. So, sexual double standards exist and very well do gender roles as well. Men are viewed as the initiator for sexual activity and are given sexual freedom, whereas women do not have this freedom and are restricted. Oftentimes, a man who pursues his sexuality is like, oh, yes, that's good for him. But when a girl does that, they're either called a whore or a slut, or if they don't participate in sex, they're a prude or they're frigid. This creates power imbalances, and the gender rules contribute to the assumption of whether one or not has received consent or not. So there are many outside influences, but today I'm only going to talk about 3: alcohol, acquaintances, and sexual orientation. 50 to 75% of sexual assaults involve alcohol consumption. Women know their perpetrator in 3 out of 4 of all rapes and sexual assaults. And bisexual women and gay men are more likely to experience assaults compared to their heterosexual peers. So I was wondering if the sexual orientation, even though they're more likely to be victims or survivors of these acts, I was wondering if they had a better understanding or a lesser understanding of sexual consent. So, another major part in my literature review was the discussion of prevention programs and whether they're helpful or not. They're designed for college-aged men, and a study done by Garrity found that men did not have a clear understanding of consent, which led to the previously mentioned topic of unintentional rape. Unintentional rape is whenever a person does not realize that the act they're committing is without consent or that they're harming another person. These programs would provide a comprehensive education which would raise awareness to consequences such as the legalities. It would address sexual safety such as using condoms and how to lower your risk for STDs and STIs. And it would also address the characteristics of rape and sexual assault, which would directly combat the unintentional rape. It would tell you this constitutes consent and this does not constitute consent. So we're going to talk about my methods. First, the population is going to be Carleton University students. Those in the undergrad program are going to be highlighted because it would be hard to reach out to those in master's programs, and the statistics are primarily about those in the undergrad programs. And all genders will be asked to complete this survey, and then there will be comparisons between genders and sexual orientation because those are the 2 main focuses I want to talk about, or I wish to learn about. So my method of research will be a survey, and the tool will be an electronic survey. This is a lot easier than going around and asking people to fill out surveys, and it'll be a lot easier to actually collect the data and keep it all in one place. Okay, and the data being collected is qualitative data. And through this, I'll ask yes or no questions. Sorry for the hiccups. And some of the examples of some of these questions would be, do you have consent if your partner says maybe, yes or no? Do you have consent if your partner is intoxicated, yes or no? Do you automatically have consent if your partner is your girlfriend or boyfriend, yes or no? And do you need a verbal cue to know that you have received consent or not, yes or no? And these answers will vary, and I want to see the variations between the different genders and different sexual orientations to see if I can compare them and see if there are any differences. So the ethics behind this research is that the survey will only ask for their year, their gender, and their sexual orientation. The survey will not ask for names or personal contact information. The way that these surveys will go out is through email, through the student list, and whenever I receive my results, I will find a way to have confidentiality, whether it be an identification number, but their names will not be mentioned in any of my research. It will be completely confidential. All information will be. So, just as a conclusion, this type of research has the potential to highlight the misunderstandings in sexual consent, which would combat unintentional rape or even the claim that it was an unintentional rape. And a possible prevention program at Carlow University would lower the sexual assault and rape rates. This would create a safe environment for our students, especially because our students are primarily women, primarily female, and those are primarily the victims of sexual assault and rape. All right, and here are a list of my references. Thank you very much for listening.